Welcome to my tiny YouTube home studio. I thought it would be fun to give you a tour of this tiny space and an insight into the decisions I've made to try and turn this tiny space into a home studio for me to shoot my YouTube videos in, and a place where I can edit. I had three main goals when transforming the space. Number one, I wanted it to look cool and feel like my own YouTube set, and it's still a work in progress. Number two, I wanted it to sound good. Number three, and possibly most importantly, I wanted to reduce as much friction as possible when it comes to making videos in the space. You see, over the past few years, I haven't really had a dedicated space to shoot in, and every time I made a video, I would need to set up lights and tripods from scratch, use random things around the house to block out light or to hold a microphone in place, and it was less than ideal. I wanted a space that I could set up and start shooting in less than 5 minutes. So I'm going to run through the things I did to set up this space, to transform it into what it looks like now, as well as show you some of the things I have planned for future updates to this room. I'll leave links to everything I mentioned in the video description down below. The apartment we're renting came semi-furnished, so it had this desk and these drawers, so I figured I would use those so I don't have to buy anything else. I shot a video in here before doing anything to the studio, and it was tough to control the light with the walls being so white. I knew I wanted to darken the walls. The sound also wasn't great, and I wanted to do some acoustic treatment. I figured instead of painting the walls, since I'm renting, I could use these foam panels I found on Amazon to darken the room and fix the audio problem at the same time. I calculated that I would need about 48 panels for each wall, so I needed about 200 panels. And when they arrived, the boxes filled the whole tiny studio. The first step was to get the panels up on the walls. The foam panels I bought are not compressed, so they were ready to stick on the wall straight away. They were pretty easy to stick onto the walls with the double-sided stickers, which are supposed to be able to come off without pulling paint off. But I'll only really know if that's true sometime in the future. After the panels were installed, I shot another video with my key light, the Godox SL60W, with a softbox above me to the right and the small RGB light to the side to lighten up the shadows on my face. I realized how dark the room now was, and if I didn't have the little RGB light in the perfect position, my face was still pretty dark. I decided that I need to get a lot more light in the room, so I first installed these Govee LED strip lights. These lights are super easy to install and super affordable. You can link them to the app and control the lighting in so many different ways. I can set all of the lights to one color. I can even adjust the color of the lights in different segments. There are also a ton of different effects if I want the lighting to be more dynamic. This light adds a nice blue ambient light into the scene, giving the dark panels a little bit of color. And then I also got another Govee light, an RGB tube light. This also works with the app, and I can customize colors and effects like the other Govee light. I like to use this light as a sort of room light just to light up my left-hand side. And if I zoom out, it works really nicely as a practical light in the scene as well. Sometimes when I'm editing, I don't like to edit in a very bright environment, and with just these lights, I can now set the mood for editing and for color grading. I'll usually set the LED strip light to blue and the tube light to orange, creating a really cool vibe to edit in. Because I'm still dialing in exactly how I want the lighting to look when I'm shooting in here, I have this little RGB light down on the floor, set to a low brightness, pointing up at me to get rid of some of the shadows on my face. Let's break down how each light contributes to the final look. I'll start with all the lights off, then I'll turn on the LED strip lights, and you'll see what that does to the panels on the wall, the slight blue tint on the desk, and it also acts as a subtle hair light. Next, I'll turn on the RGB tube light, and you'll see how that lights up my left-hand side. Then I'll switch my Godox key light on to light me up, and I have the brightness set to about 75%. So that you can compare, I'll leave the key light on, and I'll turn off the tube light and the blue LED strip lights so you can see exactly what it looks like with just the key light. And let me also put this RGB light on so you can see the difference that makes in the shadows on my face. So that is my current setup. Let's talk about the desk setup. This is what my desk looked like before. Nothing special, and it's relatively neat, but I did want to tidy things up even more. After working solely on a MacBook screen without an external monitor for over a year, I was super excited to get a nice big 4K monitor. So I bought a 32-inch HP monitor, and I've been using it for a while now, and I honestly really love it. It's sharp, it's clear, and the colors are accurate. But also anything I plug into the back of the monitor, like my keyboard or my Monogram Creative Console, is connected via that one cable. Speaking of the Monogram Creative Console, it's actually totally changed the way I edit. I always used to think, why would I need an editing console? I can just use my keyboard. But it's drastically sped up my workflow. This keyboard cover was sent to me by Editor's Keys, and it has a ton of useful Final Cut Pro shortcuts on it, which is great if you need to quickly remember a shortcut or learn some new ones if you didn't know them before. It's got a nice soft rubber feel, and I really like the way it feels when I type on it. This is such a cool thing to have if you're the kind of person that has trouble remembering shortcuts. They make covers for tons of different apps and keyboards, and they also sell keyboards, so I'll leave a link to them down below if you'd like to check them out. My computer of choice is the 16-inch M1 Max MacBook Pro. Having it on the desk like this was okay, but I did kind of want to get it out the way, so I bought a MacBook stand, and now I can slot my MacBook out of the way, giving me more desk space. I have these Bose noise-cancelling headphones, which I've used for years. I like the zero latency that you get with wired headphones, but the cable on the desk can be a little annoying. So I wanted the headphones to be off the desk when I'm not using them. I bought a small headphone stand, so I can put the headphones under the table and out of the way when I don't need them. Being able to move things out of the way made cable management a little easier as well. I like working off an external SSD, so I have one of those plugged into the MacBook Pro, and the rest of my desk is pretty clear. I feel like I can concentrate more and work more efficiently when my desk isn't full of stuff. I also bought a fake plant because, to be honest, I'll probably kill a real one, just to add a little non-distracting visual interest in the frame when I'm shooting, and even though it's fake, it feels good to have a plant in the studio space. When it comes to filming, I have my Komon tripod set up in the corner, and I leave my Sony a7 III with a Tamron 28 to 75mm lens attached to it. I also have my Best View teleprompter on there. For audio, I use the Rode VideoMic NTG, and I run that into a Zoom H4n Pro audio recorder. Now, every time I shoot, I have to set up the audio from scratch because I like to get the microphone as close to my mouth as possible while still being out of the frame. So I generally clamp it onto the desk with this small rig clamp and the selfie pole from my Insta360. I position it low down so it's out of the frame, but still pretty close to my mouth. One of my main goals with this tiny YouTube studio space of mine was to drastically reduce the amount of time it takes to set everything up to shoot. In the past, I would totally disassemble all the lights and the tripods and the camera gear because I had no space to keep it up. Now I keep my Godox light on its stand with the softbox attached, and it's constantly there. The same thing with the Sony a7 III and the Tamron lens, it's constantly on the tripod. The only setup I have to do is the microphone and the little RGB light on the floor. I've come a long way in setting up this tiny YouTube studio in a way that works for me, but there are still 3 things I would like to do in the future to streamline how I work in this space even further. Firstly, I would like to possibly get an auto pole, which is an extendable pole that can run from wall to wall or floor to ceiling, and it's super sturdy. With that, I can mount my microphone and run the cable down another arm or something, which I can then attach to the Zoom audio recorder and the extra RGB light. Secondly, I'm thinking of getting another tripod so I can set up the second Sony a7 III that I have behind the desk, so that way I can have 2 angles when I'm talking as opposed to setting up the camera separately for 2 different angles. Lastly, these cabinets are great for storing things, but I definitely want to organize them more efficiently, and I also want to build a custom charging station that I can put in these drawers. So I want to be able to plug in all of my batteries into one board and then plug that board into the wall and charge everything at the same time. So that's it, my tiny YouTube studio / editing suite. If you have any questions about the setup or about any of the things that I mentioned in this video, let me know in the comments down below. This video was a little different to what I usually post on the channel, but if you enjoyed it, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. It just takes a second and it goes a really long way. See you in the next one.